Today's show is all about the wide receiver position because we may have gotten Tyreek Hill's future in Miami revealed by his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, plus a wonky rumor. Will the Dolphins potentially be the team that signs Brandon Aiyuk if he's released by the San Francisco 49ers? Well, let's start just by talking about the wide receiver position because when you go towards the future of where this roster is heading with ages, roster construction, wide receiver 2 is actually going to be a need for this ball club. Tyreek Hill is not going to be on this team much longer. We'll explain more why in a second. And if he does ultimately get cut or traded this upcoming offseason, well, guess what? You don't have a bona fide number 2 wide receiver you can go out and trust under contract. So you will have to find a way to add someone, whether it's via free agency or via the draft. And I want you to share this video to as many Dolphins fans as you know, because I want this content to get all over Dolphins media, whether it is a friend, family member, coworker. Help spread the word of today's show. But let's look at the wide receivers under contract for Miami in 2026. You obviously have the names, you have the age, and then you have their cap hit for 2026. And there is a gigantic polar bear in Dallas, Texas, up top with Tyreek Hill. $51.8 million cap hit for Tyreek going into his age 32 season. You obviously have Waddle, Westbrook, Keeney, Malik, and Taj all under contract. Westbrook, Keeney, this will be the final year of his deal at $3.1 million. Disappointed with his production this year, but certainly not a bad contract by any stretch. Waddle at 11.6 is a steal. That number takes a gigantic leap up the year after. But the point I'm trying to make is that you are not going to have Tyreek Hill play out his last year under contract at that cap hit. And if you do ultimately trade him or release him, you only have these 4 guys under contract, and you're definitely going to add or need to add another guy next to Jalen Waddle. But this is what Drew Rosenhaus ultimately said on his client, Tyreek Hill. When asked if he's going to return next season, Rosenhaus says that depends on the Dolphins. I haven't had any discussions with the Dolphins yet about Tyreek or his future with the team. We'll have those discussions after the season. And if you want the realistic translation of that quote from Drew Rosenhaus, I'll give it to you. There's a new regime in Miami coming in 2026, and there's absolutely no chance he is a Dolphin next year. Now, if you told me Chris Grier was still going to be the GM of this team, I would say it's probably a 50-50 chance he ultimately hits his contract restructured and stays in Miami, or he gets cut and the Dolphins save money. But now that you will have a full new GM who did not make the Tyreek Hill trade, did not give him all of the restructured contracts and extensions they have over the last 3 years, I just believe the new person is going to come in, look at the books, look at his contract, come to the fact he's coming off a major knee surgery at age 32 and be like, yeah, we're just going to wipe our hands clean and ultimately trade or cut Tyreek Hill this offseason to save $25+ million in cap and use that to help upgrade the team elsewhere. So I don't think there's any world that Tyreek Hill ultimately returns to Miami in 2026. But do you agree with me? Prediction time. Will Tyreek Hill be a Dolphin in 2026? Type Y for yes or N for no. Pin comment on today's show. Assuming that I am correct and he is no longer on the Miami Dolphins next season, Miami should absolutely look to draft a wide receiver on day 2. We'll take a look at some of the free agent options later on in the show as well. But with Miami having 5 picks inside the top 100, 1 first, 1 second, and 3 third-round picks as of now, that could obviously grow. Could also decrease if Miami traded for a veteran or someone like that. I think third-round pick on a wide receiver could make a lot of sense. And heck, if the right guy's there in the second round, because I know this is a need that we're going to have going forward, I wouldn't be mad at taking a wide receiver in the second round if it was the right guy. I don't think I would advocate for it in the first round. If the Dolphins are picking inside the top 15, I would probably go somewhere else. But any one of these 10 names could easily be impactful, productive wide receivers at the next level. And with them joining the team, like literally any of these 10 could be a difference maker with Waddle, NWI, Malik Washington. I like a lot of those tight ends. A couple guys that really catch my eye. I like Zachariah Branch. He's very nifty, very athletic. I like Chris Bell out of Louisville. Ian Strong from Rutgers is rising the ranks. We've seen C.J. Daniels play really well for Carson Beck and the Canes. I also am a sneaky Jeremy Bernard guy. I really like him out of Alabama. He's been really good for Ty Simpson this year. The point is this. You should look to add a wide receiver through the draft to complement Jalen Waddle, because I am probably not in the business of spending a lot of money on 2 wide receivers. I think that can work if you have a really elite quarterback on a rookie contract, but Miami doesn't have that. They have Tua, who's being paid $50 million. So do you really want to advocate and allocate close to, $80 million, $90 million to your quarterback and 2 wide receivers? That's damn near 40% of the cap. And it's like, at that point, are you going to be able to build out a true winning roster if you have $80, $90 million going towards your quarterback and 2 wide receivers? No, probably not. So if you want to be successful next year and going forward, I think having elite wide receiver one like Waddle, a quarterback that is solid, I don't even care if it is Tua. I don't care if it is someone being paid a lot of money. And then at wide receiver 2 on a rookie contract. I think that number 2 wide receiver being on a rookie deal is very, very key. Coming up in just one second, Brandon Aiyuk. Is he going to be a Dolphin? We'll talk about that here in just one second. But this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is here. It's the best time of the year for sports, bowl games, basketball matches, playoff pushes, all happening at once. And while you and I are here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. I love playing Prize Picks. You can play so many different ways. You can do more than on free throws made, field goals attempted, fantasy score, with all of the different sports league in action right now. And new feature alert, Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. How about that, folks? I've got an entry for Thanksgiving football, baby, and I'm looking at the quarterbacks. I got more than Jared Goff passing yards. I got more than Mahomes passing yards. And I got less than on Burrow passing yards in his return to action. Join me and the millions of others on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, now on the program. Brandon Aiyuk. Is he a Dolphin? Certainly thinks this is a crazy idea, and you would have never even thought of saying that until this past weekend. Dianna Russini reported in her article that Brandon Aiyuk has probably played his last game as a member of the 49ers. And you might be thinking to yourself, what do you mean? Like, just 15 months ago, he signed a massive contract extension with San Francisco. Yeah, you're right. But it seems to be this relationship has gone to the shitter. Let's look at what Russini reported. He was expected to be back on the field by now. However, he has been absent from numerous meetings and other team activities throughout the season, leading the 49ers to void the 2026 guarantees, more than $25 million worth, in the 4-year, $120 million deal he signed 15 months ago. So, whatever reason, Aiyuk in San Francisco not seeing eye to eye, or maybe it's just an immaturity issue for Brandon Aiyuk, not reporting to meetings that were required or rehab assignments, because you saw in the report from Russini, it was expected that he would be on the field by now, but he has not been on the field. He was expected to be back around week 8, week 13. I don't know what went up there, but it doesn't feel like he is going to play for the 49ers this year, and he ultimately may be released since those contracts years got voided by the Niners just a little bit ago. So if he does get released this offseason and is a free agent, Brandon Aiyuk destinations listed by Bleacher Report were these 5. In order, by the way. They had the Cardinals, the Dolphins, the Jets, the Steelers, and the Seahawks. And I found it very interesting that Miami is in at number 2. I actually do think there is a decent chance this is a possibility, considering this could be a perfect pairing. Mike McDaniel was the run game coordinator as well as the offensive coordinator in 2020 and 2021 with the 49ers before he became the head coach of the Dolphins. Brandon Aiyuk got drafted in 2020, so his first 2 years in the NFL, he was being coached up by McDaniel every single day. So I think Aiyuk, if he has a good relationship with McDaniel, could ultimately look to join Mike in Miami. And assuming the Dolphins do end up releasing Tyreek Hill, saving a bunch of money, and look to add another wide receiver 2 opposite of Waddle, Aiyuk makes a lot of sense because he's got, when healthy, good size, good hands, good route running, and could be that good complement to Waddle's speed on the outside and inside. We're going to round out the show here in a second, but if the Dolphins ever make a move, we'll have you covered. So subscribe and turn on notifications to get top-notch Dolphins coverage on YouTube. But we look at Brandon Aiyuk's last 4 years here. Obviously hasn't made his 2025 debut, got hurt in 2024, but this was one of the more elite receivers in the league in 2022 and 23. And it took a little bit for them to really get acclimated together and Aiyuk to find his stride. First-round pick out of Arizona State in 2020, really couldn't get his right foot forward early on in his career. But flashed on the scene in 2022, first 1,000-yard season, looked like a dominant wide receiver in 2023. But after he's gotten this contract and had that career year in 2023, it has not been the smoothest of times for Brandon Aiyuk. And even though I do think he would be a really good fit in this Dolphins offense, especially if Mike McDaniel was still the head coach going into 2026, I still don't think it makes a ton of sense for Miami to ultimately sign him in free agency if he is available, because Miami doesn't have a lot of cap space. They're probably going to have about $45 billion to spend this offseason once they make some roster moves, some trades, some restructured contracts, and you need to use that to help fortify the defensive line, add some more secondary pieces, edge rushers, offensive line, and I don't think that spending $15 million on a wide receiver 2 makes a ton of sense. Now, if you told me Brandon Aiyuk wants to rejoin with Mike McDaniel for like $8, $9, $10 million on a one-year deal, yeah, I'll say yes to that. But if he wants a one-year $15 million deal or 2 years for $30, I don't really know if that's the smartest thing for the Dolphins to do at this point. But you can be the GM for me and let me know your thoughts. Would you sign Brandon Aiyuk? Type S for sign, type P for pass. Get down in the comment section and let your voice get heard. Well, if they don't go after Brandon Aiyuk, we talked about some draft targets in the second round. What about some free agents Miami could sign to be the wide receiver 2? It's actually a relatively solid wide receiver free agent class. Some guys are going to get paid a lot of money. George Pickens, Mike Evans, obviously really old, 32. Does he get a lot of money coming off an injury? Deebo Samuel is 29. Jakobi Meyers is 29. A lot of people project Alec Pierce and Rashid Shaheed to get a good chunk of change. Now, I think Alec Pierce would be a great fit with the Dolphins, but it does sound like some team will go out there and pay him like 3 years, $54 million, 18 per season. Is that smart for Miami? I don't know, but I do think Pierce would be a terrific fit with the Dolphins. I think Romeo Doubs is an intriguing guy. Like, if he goes for like 11 per season and the Dolphins could sign him to like a 3 for 33 to be the wide receiver 2 alongside Waddle, I would be open to that move because Doubs is a really good route runner. The only question we have on him is his hands, but he would be a good addition in this Dolphins offense. But if you're asking me how I'd like to address this wide receiver 2 issue that we will have going forward, I think it's just through the draft. I talked about it earlier. Getting that wide receiver 2 on a rookie deal will just make your life so much easier because you're not giving up as much money to that position. Then you're allowed to spend it on D-line, secondary, which is maybe more of a need for the Dolphins at this point. So if you're asking me how to address that wide receiver 2, definitely look into the second or third round of the draft. And I do think this draft class at wide receiver is pretty dang solid. That'll do it for today's show. If you have any questions or just want more Dolphins coverage, follow me over on Twitter at @Nick_Roloff.